Hood Canal Communications and MasonWebTV.com present 2016 general election candidates video sit-downs. Here is Diedrich Allen with Irene Bowling, candidate for 35th District State Representative, Position 1.
First off, tell everybody, remind everybody who you are while you're running. Give us a little bit of a background on you.
Sure, right. Well, thank you, first of all, for having time for me here today. Beautiful drive along the Hood Canal. Really enjoyed it. Gorgeous part of the world. I live on Chica Way in Kitsap County. My family moved there in the 1930s, and my uncles were loggers out here in Mason County, and my parents met at the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. And so I'm part of the scene here. My family has been for many, many years. I'm a professional teacher, educator. I run a music school. I've taught at Olympic College. I'm a concert pianist. I've performed many places in the United States and in Europe. And the main reason I'm running is because I want to see things really get done in the state legislature. I'm impatient to have our schools funded. I'm impatient to have our social services funded correctly and organized correctly. And I think that especially here in Mason County, I'd like to address any issues or questions related mainly to our county, being that this is your TV station down here. For the viewers, the 35th has part of Kitsap County, which I'm part of. I live up there near Silverdale, all the way to Grand Mound, almost down to Chehalis. So it's a very big district. All of Mason County and part of Thurston County. So it's a very diverse section of our country and our state. And every area has different issues. And I think Mason County in particular has some very special issues that need to be addressed by our legislators. And I aim to do that.
Now, 2 years ago, you ran for state senate.
I did.
What did you learn during that campaign? What was did something just stick out during that campaign to you?
Well, one thing that I really, really enjoyed is meeting people through different organizations, through community organizations, doorbelling, of course. I've done a lot of that. I've done about 7,000 doors right now, up to this point, just in this campaign. And the issues that I ran for to begin with in 2014 are still the issues now. And so that's why I threw my hat in the ring one more time here to see if I can make a difference for our citizens here in the 35th.
Your top priorities: education, resources, and families. So let's talk about each of them.
Right.
Let's start out with education. If elected, how do you plan to make sure our schools receive the funding they need?
Right. Well, as a lifelong educator, I started teaching when I was 13, believe it or not, neighborhood kids, and I'm still doing it. That is really close to my heart, and it is the crux and basis and backbone of any civilization or society. And I feel that a child here in Mason County should have the same opportunities in education that someone in Bellevue or Mercer Island has. But that's really not the case now, the way the education system is set up. We have almost 28% of our funding of education in the school districts dependent on levies. So if a wealthy school district votes in all the levies and capital projects for their schools, they have amazing facilities, they have great opportunities, they have top faculty, and they can retain their faculty because they'll be getting paid well. Then you have more rural areas like Mason County, and all of those issues are much more challenged. And I don't think that's right. A kid here should have the same opportunities as anywhere else in the state. So I think that the levy situation is very poor. It's gotten exasperated, much worse as the years have gone by. And that's one thing I'd like to address. The other issue is funding education. The mantra for many politicians right now is fund education first. However, number one, they're not saying how they're going to do that, where they're going to get this money. And secondly, what effect, even if they do get this money, is it going to have on all the social services that children rely on? We have almost 20% of people that are on food stamps here in Mason County. So let's say we cut a lot of state programs for mental health, affordable housing, other issues. You know, it's not just for a kid going to school at 8 in the morning and coming back at 3 in the afternoon. What are they going to eat? You know, if their parents have drug or alcohol dependency problems, how is that going to be addressed? What kind of home are they going to live in? What kind of transportation are they going to get? Look at the road situation here in Mason County. So there are many, many different issues that need to be addressed in addition to just funding education. And that is what I'm concerned about. Having a 3 or 4 word little sentence, fund education first, is not, you know, it sounds great, and if you say it enough, maybe enough people will believe it, but they're not saying how. So, as a legislator, I think number one, you have to find revenue sources. Now, there have been many, many so-called loopholes. These are like kickbacks that the state has given to big corporations for them to do business here in the state. Many of these things were even instituted like 40, 50 years ago that don't even apply to anything. Even other companies are distorting it and using these loopholes for their own businesses, but they didn't apply to them to begin with. Over 640 of these loopholes have been addressed, and this has been passed through in the House, but the Senate keeps on knocking it down. So that's almost $1 billion of revenue that we could be gaining for our schools and for our social programs that my opponent and the Republicans refused to take a stand on. So that's something that I would definitely do differently. My main alliance is for the working class, for people that are really the backbone of our state, and not for wealthy corporations. I'm not there to protect them.
Okay. Resources. What will it take to ensure our natural resources are managed responsibly, and how will you balance that with the needs of the district and, of course, the state?
Well, one thing that I think that we could benefit from greatly in our area is tourism. Since the recession, we do not have a department of tourism. And I mean, just driving here from my area along the Hood Canal here, this is really God's country, as they say. Mm-hmm. This is beautiful. And I think that developing a Department of Tourism for the state would be very well spent, especially for our more rural communities, because that's where people want to go. They want to get out of the cities, the horrible traffic jams in Seattle, and they want to go somewhere beautiful and to get away from it all. So this could build up a lot of revenue for our area here in Mason County. Another issue is our forestry products. I mean, because we are challenged in the logging industry now, I think that there have been many innovative products that are using a plywood kind of a product that we could have a manufacturing plant. I know that Congressman Kilmer has brought this up. I've spoken to him about this. I'm very interested in using alternative ways of the lumber that we could harvest here and how we could use that for more updated and modern technology. And I think they're doing a lot of research on that. That's an industry that I would love to see come into Mason County. As far as our waterways, we have some huge issues with acidification. I'm sure everyone, all your viewers are aware of this, and the shellfish industry and how we're taking some of the baby shellfish other places to grow big enough where they can actually go back into these waters. This is a big problem. So economically, we are very dependent on the timber and also on the water producing fishing, shellfish, gooey duck, etc. And if we don't protect our waterways and make some really important statewide decisions from the state legislature on how to protect this, we are going to be hurt big time. So I think tourism and also the industries that are dependent on our natural resources. And then the third most important thing for all of us, just as people that live out here, is we live here because it's beautiful. So I think having regulations that benefit both industry and preserving the beauty that we have here is very important. And I think that we can't do one without the other. We'd be shooting ourselves in the foot.
All right. Families. What are the top challenges facing families today, and what is your plan to help alleviate those burdens?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, 20% of our population is on public assistance of some kind. in Mason County. And so we have very high unemployment. So my main concern is jobs. Now, how do we get jobs? How do we produce jobs here? I mentioned a couple of things, just natural resources and tourism. Education. If we don't have an educated populace, if our kids over in our area are getting a worse education, have less opportunities educationally than kids in the Seattle area, that's going to put them in a permanent disadvantage of getting a good paying job. Also, wouldn't it be great if people could actually work where they live? The average person around here commutes maybe an hour and a half to a job. They just passed a gas tax, which actually I wasn't too crazy about, okay? That's, again, who's that hurting? It's hurting people like us that have to drive a long ways, and tolls on bridges. So we need jobs here that will cut back on our commuting time away from our families. It will be cheaper for us. And we have lots of land here. We have opportunities, I think, that if we can draw people over here to start industries in Mason County, it would be a big boom. So we need an educated populace. We need to also expand Olympic College. There is no college of higher learning in this area. And wherever you have universities or colleges, it draws industry. It has a whole infrastructure that is drawn in. It's almost like a vortex where lots of other things grow around it. I mean, when you go over to Seattle, you've got University of Washington, you have Seattle Pacific University, Seattle University. You know, you have several community colleges right within a 50-mile radius. So of course you're going to draw a lot of people and a lot of businesses that are related to that industry. So I think that expanding higher education much more than the little bit that we have here in Shelton would be a huge boon for this area. Jobs, education, having good social services, affordable housing. But one of the biggest things that I'm really very upset about is that they passed a transportation package. And our legislators that are now there now, and my opponent. However, none of that money is really benefiting us here. It takes me an hour and a half to go from where I am in Kitsap County out to this office right here. You know, I mean, you can't attract industry or business if you've got little windy roads and they're not lit. We've got 3, which is a very dangerous road, but we don't have any major transportation route into Mason County, except from the south. And then that stops after a certain point. So I think that we need to get state money and develop our road and transportation issues here in Mason County. I think that's one of the key issues that we could really work on.
Shifting gears now, the Growth Management Act, in your opinion, has it worked?
The Growth Management Act was instituted in 1990, and I live on the water up in Kitsap County, and I realized that many of the issues and things that they were trying to achieve were to protect waterways in particular. When I remember my neighbors and several people in that area used to have their washing and their septic that would actually go into the Dyes Inlet. So the shellfish population died, the salmon quit running on Chico Creek. You know, many very bad things happened in our area because there were really no restrictions or regulations at all to protect the environment. So I think that the Growth Management Act has served many purposes. It's done a lot of good. It's controlled a lot of environmental issues. However, when you're looking at rural areas like Mason County, it was instituted in 1990. Things have changed. There's a lot more population coming into our area. There are many people here that are interested in developing tracts of land, which I can't really see any reason not to do that. They're not next to a stream bed. They're not necessarily on the water. Also, we have 25% of our property here in Mason County that belong to Green Diamond. So we have a limited amount of property that we can develop. So I think it's important to have certain regulations that protect people and the general public. However, I would like to see more local what would be the word? More local influence on and look at things more individualistically. So just because you have something over the whole state doesn't mean it necessarily benefits us. And if we're trying to develop jobs and industry and opportunities and getting people to be able to stay at home and commute a short distance to work, we need to make some adjustments in some of these issues. So I see both pros and cons to growth management. Yeah.
That's really my last question, because you covered my actual last question in
Oh.
answer.
Okay.
Is there anything else you want to mention that brings you into this race?
Well, I'm a small business person, and I have fought tooth and nail to have successful business for the last 37 years. I think that a lot of people, if they're not working for a large corporation, or if they're not working for the shipyard like my family did, or the Navy, what is one of the other things that they're going to want to do here in this area? And this includes Kitsap and also Thurston County. They're going to want to start their own small businesses. Plus, I think that small business is exciting. It's exciting to be able to use your imagination, your creativity, to maybe be able to make a living for your family in that way, and be your own boss. So I am really pro small business. I think that the B&O tax is a bad thing for small business, because if we're trying to develop job growth and yet people are getting taxed on whether their little beginning baby fledgling business is making a profit or not, that's going to discourage a lot of people from even getting into it. So I think that's something that we could really make a big adjustment on. And again, it would bring jobs and encourage people to start small business here in our area.
All right.
So, yeah.
Irene Bowling,
All right.
Democratic candidate for 35th District State Representative, position number 1. Thank you for taking some time.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Hood Canal Communications and MasonWebTV.com are helping voters make informed decisions.